for Kiermaier.
2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Welcome up, Brent Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matthew Moreno. Thank you, everybody, by the way, on the live stream for being patient with us. A little technical difficulties that we had, but we are here to talk NLCS roster announcements for the Dodgers to preview Game 1, among other things. But, Matt, let's just start with the news. We had gotten a sense last night as we did the live show that Vesia unlikely to be on this roster, Rojas unlikely to be on this roster. Both of those things are now official, and I have to give you some credit because you nailed both of the replacements. Brent Honeywell replaces Vesia. Kevin Kiermaier replaces Miguel Rojas. So in one sense, no surprises if you've been following this very closely, but if you're just popping up today, you might be surprised to hear Vesia and Rojas off.
Yeah, well, first to echo what you said, thank you to everybody joining us for this live show. We're talking roster stuff. We'll do a little bit of a preview for you guys. I know, obviously, Jeff, you and I had the live show last night. We were on with David Vesia this morning, which I encourage everybody, once we're done here, to definitely check out that interview as well. And I will apologize ahead of time for the heavy dose of us too. So thank you. Hopefully people aren't sick of us by the time that we are done doing all this. But yeah, as for the roster stuff, it was the Vesia one I was more confident in that it was obvious he wasn't going to be on just because the nature of his injury and what Dave Roberts, the information he did have available at the time. And, we're recording this probably about an hour and a half before Dave will speak with media again today before Game 1. So maybe we'll get more details on, Vesia's outlook moving, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but naturally that's going to be the next question, right? We already got it last night. Hey, if the Dodgers advance, is Vesia available? So that's TBD right now. The Honeywell thing, like I said on our live show, he's been keeping active, even though he had, kind of the cracked fingernail issue to end the season that landed him on the injured list. And Dave Roberts did mention that Honeywell is still dealing with that. But that, he was certainly going to be an option. And I could tell, like I did tell you guys, every time I was at a workout, whether at Dodger Stadium or Petco Park, there was one constant, and that was Brent Honeywell continuing to throw live batting practice. So I think, not so much that the Dodgers were prepared, predicting an injury, but in the event of something happening, they were prepared, and Honeywell was the most likely choice. The Rojas angle, as much as I thought there was a good chance that he wouldn't necessarily be on, I wasn't sure, right? Like, he's a veteran player. Like, the Dodgers have made it clear how much they really value his presence and contributions. But I think him not being included on the NLCS roster sort of, is further indication of just how bad his injury is.
Yeah. And I think knowing what it cost them, I mean, we saw in real time what Rojas's injury cost them. Obviously, one of the mistakes he made was a mental one, but then not being able to score on a play, which ultimately didn't matter because he came around to score anyways. I think when you see that in real time and you realize how thin the margins are, especially in that case, a 5-game series that goes fully the 5, you can't really take those chances. And I know there are going to be people that have been telling me the same thing about Freddie Freeman, with one major difference. One of those gentlemen is Freddie Freeman, and the other one is Miguel Rojas. I'll take my chances with Freddie Freeman being injured and being limited because he has the ability to absolutely change the game with his bat. He also plays a position, first base, that's far less impacted by mobility. Now, we've seen on the base paths, Freddie Freeman could become a liability potentially, but the positives dramatically outweigh the negatives with Freddie Freeman. And oh, by the way, with Miguel Rojas down, you don't have a natural replacement for Freddie Freeman, because if Muncy were to move over, Kike's been playing third base, but Kike is now, we'll talk about in a moment, probably your everyday center fielder or something close to it. And so it's not like you have extra pieces to shift around as easily as if Rojas was healthy. So part of this is going to be a massive sort of amount of pressure to some degree on Freddie Freeman. They can't really afford to him to have off days. And so I know I'm getting ahead of myself there, but I think there's a trickle-down effect of why they make this decision with Rojas. And so my question to you is, what's the impact on the Rojas side then? The assumption is that Tommy Edman will move in and play shortstop. I hinted, I think Kike Hernandez is going to be an everyday center fielder. There's some talk of possibly Andy Pages comes in to play center field. against lefties. And then Kike Hernandez could play second base for Gavin Lux in that situation. So do you see Kike Hernandez being an everyday guy? Do you think Andy Pages actually takes a bulk of the playing time? How do you see those two things playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kike becomes the primary center fielder. I know, kind of looking ahead to game 2 when a lefty is probably. I'm actually, the Mets have set their rotation, so when that happens, I think that's where I said it last night. I do see a scenario where maybe Kike goes to second base.
Yeah.
And Pages starts then in center field. But yeah, I think with Tommy Edman, certainly is the easiest kind of element to all of this, right? Like he now becomes a shortstop. And fortunately for the Dodgers, they believe in him. And I have seen no reason to not trust Tommy Edman playing more than capable shortstop position for the Dodgers. And so that's important. I think Kike still, like I told you, I'm inclined to believe that the Dodgers recognize that what he's capable of doing what he has done in the playoffs, not even capable of doing it, like he's done it. And so because of that, he'll be in the lineup every day. But what I don't want to say worry about, what sort of holds me back is, and I mentioned it again, so I apologize, guys, if you were with us on the live show last night, is Kike's role during the regular season was, kind of utility filling in here and there.
Yeah.
And is that because that's what the Dodgers believe best suits him? Was it just because of their roster construction and, they wanted to give Andy Pages the majority of the starts in center field? Like maybe it's a little bit of both. All that being said, this is, kind of a sprint now, right? You're 8 wins away from your ultimate goal. And so at this point, you need to kind of go with your proverbial hot hand. And Kike is obviously one of them. And I know as you're looking up a lot of stats, kind of not to throw this to a complete tangent, but I do see the chat going crazy saying, I picked the Padres, didn't pick the Padres, curse the Mets, this and that. I don't want to hear it. 80% of our chat was afraid of playing the Padres, and I was saying, bring it on. Like, play them. Who cares? So, hey, and I already made my picks last night. So if you missed it, then I don't know if I'll end up cursing the Mets.
Matt's the most confident. Matt's more confident in the Dodgers now than anybody else on the show as far as his prediction. So he's got that going for him. I do want to pick up on what you were saying about the platoon thing, because Kike Hernandez, clearly they view as a platoon guy, somebody who's much better against lefties than he is against righties, which has been true of him throughout his career. And yes, Kike Hernandez in the postseason is an entirely different animal, so to speak. He's a different hitter. He has been historically. But here's the thing that I think has to be said. People that are saying, well, Kike's just a platoon guy. The problem is now they don't have other options. Like, because you could say, well, Andy Pages is worse against right-handed hitters than Kike Hernandez was this season. And so even if they felt that Kike Hernandez was a platoon guy and that he should only be playing against lefties, they don't have anybody else to play against righties. And so I think Kike Hernandez is going to be in the lineup every single day. Again, I think the bigger question is, do they trust Andy Pages against lefties defensively in center field enough to put him in the lineup rather than Gavin Lux? Because Kike's versatility, his ability to play center field, third base, second base, all over the place, what that does is it gives them the ability to say, hey, if we want Gavin Lux out of the lineup against lefties, well, then Kike can move in and play second base, and then you've got the ability to put Andy Pages. That's, I think, the more interesting conversation is, yes, Andy Pages, much better offensively against lefties. Gavin Lux, one of the better hitters the Dodgers had in the NLDS. He led the team in hits, I believe, at least for the first 3 or 4 games. Played really good defense at second base as well, but we know the struggles against lefties. So I'm curious for you, Matt, in game 2, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, 24 hours from now, basically, they have a lefty on the mound. If you had to guess, would it be Pages in center field and Kike at second with Lux on the bench? Or would it be Lux at second, Kike in center field, and Pages on the bench? Because I don't see them putting Pages in over Kike Hernandez. I think it's a Pages versus Lux thing.
I sort of feel like what happens in game 1 dictates some of that. If the Dodgers, which I am not expecting at all, if they were to lose game 1, I think you get Kike and Lux. I think they go with kind of their more experienced, more trusted guys. I think another wrinkle to this, and I don't have maybe you could help me out with some of the nerd stats, that when they determined if Gavin Lux is going to start against a left-hander, more times than not he didn't. There are certain matchups that they are open to having Lux play stay at second base against a lefty. I don't know. Sean Manaea, I don't think, unless he's had a recent increase in velocity, I don't think he throws terribly hard.
Yeah, he changed his arm angle, but that's kind of the big tweak that has supposedly unlocked him. So to your point, I don't know if Manaea as a lefty is the quote unquote right type of matchup for Lux. But I will say this. I do think the advantage to having Gavin Lux not start is that he gives you the one guy off the bench where if a righty comes in and you need a pinch hitter later in the game, you actually have somebody that you feel good about going to, because Chris Taylor, Kevin Kiermaier, Kike Hernandez, Andy Pais, none of those guys necessarily have great splits against righties. So the advantage to taking Lux out of the starting lineup is actually the ability to plug him back in a big spot in the 6th, 7th, 8th for Kike Hernandez or Chris Taylor or Andy Pais or whoever it might be.
Along that same line of thinking, let me throw this wrinkle at you. Freddie Freeman will be, and I know I predicted a big pinch hit at bat for him. Yeah. It could come in game 2. And I'm not like trying to be funny. I think there's a decent chance that Freddie Freeman's not in the lineup for game 2 because of the quick turnaround. They're playing tonight at 5:00. Game 2 is Monday at a little after 1 p.m. In LA. And basically Freddie Freeman is being evaluated like on a day-to-day basis. Like he has to go through his routine before each game. If he feels good enough to play, then great. He stays in the lineup at that point. So would it completely shock me if, because of the quick turnaround, because then if you don't necessarily need him in game 2, then he's able to stay off his feet that day. And then Tuesday is a travel day. So he gets 2 days off before being back in the lineup for game 3. Like, I think that is something the Dodgers will are sort of not planning for, but are potentially going to take into account. And if that does happen, sorry, not to cut you off, if that does happen, Gavin Lux is in the lineup because then you have Kike Hernandez playing third base, Max Muncy's over at first, Andy Pais is in center field, and so Lux does play at that point.
No, I think it's a great point. And I think, again, Kike's versatility allows that. But I think that's a great point by you that game 2, the real tweak might be Freddie Freeman actually sitting out. And then you've got Lux, Kike, and Pais all in. I do see some people in the chat talking about the sample size with Gavin Lux. I'm a big sample size guy if it's a small sample size. And yes, it's like 46 at-bats this season that Lux has had against lefties, and it hasn't been great. For his career, that number is 252 at-bats, and his batting average, Matt, I know you love that number, 62 points lower against lefties than it is against righties. So, yes, that's not a massive sample size. There's very few left-handed pitchers in general. So, if you're sitting against them or even every day in the lineup, you're not going to see a ton of them. But I think it's worth pointing out he is clearly, and I would say the same for Pais, I would say the same for Kike Hernandez, the same for Chris Taylor. All of these guys have splits one way or the other. But you make a great point. It will be interesting to see what happens in game 2. We do have a super chat here from SoCal Astarte. So thank you for that. Said game 1 starter Senga threw just 5 1/3 innings in the regular season and just 2 innings in the postseason. How confident are we that the Dodgers can put up a crooked number early? And yes, if you didn't know this, Senga, one of the big free agent acquisitions, that the Mets made, comes over. He made 1 start and then experienced a high-grade calf strain that was in July announced as, hey, it's going to be season ending. And then there was the surprise of he makes his way onto the divisional series roster. He throws just 2 innings. So this isn't a guy this is essentially going to be a bullpen game by all accounts, maybe a piggyback situation with a guy like David Peterson potentially right behind him. But it will be interesting to see what they get, because there just isn't, there's video of when he was pitching overseas, but this isn't a guy that anybody on the Dodgers has ever seen before, except for, I believe, Shohei Ohtani has seen him in Japan potentially. But it's interesting to see how that dynamic works. So to answer the question, Matt, are you confident that if Senga gives you 2 to 3 innings, do you think the Dodgers can get to him?
History tells us no, right? Whenever the Dodgers are getting their first look at a pitcher, and not that Senga falls in this category, he is certainly more even it is internationally, but he is more established than maybe a random pitcher that has been called up from AAA and makes a spot start against the Dodgers. And how many times have we seen on a random Wednesday in June that the Dodgers, for whatever reason, go scoreless over 5 innings against this guy who's maybe even making his MLB debut. So I don't necessarily know if it comes against Senga, but what's interesting is, yes, he is going to be limited. The likelihood of him pitching more than 3 innings isn't high,
Yeah.
I would say. And and we are seeing, Senga did come over last year, so I apologize. I was mistaken on some of his. So he's not completely new. And the Dodgers have seen him, but it is minimal. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it'll necessarily come against Senga, but I think if they could get into the Mets bullpen early, that'll certainly be beneficial. And especially with, they made changes to their NLCS roster, and we'll kind of maybe get into it a little bit later, but they're down to 12 pitchers instead of 13, which I thought was an interesting decision.
Yeah, that one doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I was with you. I was mistaken that the Dodgers had seen him July 15th last year. He threw 6 innings and pitched pretty well. 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts. It's worth pointing out, who had a pretty solid game that night? A gentleman by the name of Mookie Betts, who was 4 for 4 in that game with a home run. So just, something to keep an eye on, that Mookie Betts maybe is a guy who sees him well. JD Martinez was also in that lineup. He'll be wearing a Mets jersey and not a Dodgers jersey, but just some interesting kind of wrinkles there as far as who has seen him and who hasn't. Mookie Betts did homer off of Senga, by the way. So he singled in his first at bat, homered in his second at bat, and then Senga was out of the game. So what do you think, Matt? I mean, Mookie Betts has basically almost hit a home run in the first inning in 3 out of 5 games in this series. So do you think Mookie ambushes one early, hitting second, and puts the Dodgers on the board in the first?
No, I don't think Senga's going to give him anything to hit. I think he'll be careful, and I think maybe there'll be a little bit of rust too, just because he hasn't pitched a lot this year. And again, I apologize for it slipping my mind that yes, he of course made his MLB debut last year. Sometimes I get swept up in focusing on Dodgers stuff that I forget.
I'm with you. It's like we focus on the Dodgers. The Mets are not a team that we necessarily see all the time, and so to remember one start from July a year ago, look, that's on us. We'll be better next time. We'll be better next time. Let's talk on the relief side real quick. The other move here is Honeywell replacing Vesia. Honeywell's an interesting guy because the eye test people, such as, I don't know, Matthew Moreno, maybe, I imagine like Brent Honeywell, because 2.63 ERA in 37 innings, 20 games for the Dodgers. Like that 2.63. That's a good number for 20 appearances, 37 innings. Not bad. The nerds would tell you it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. The expected ERA over 5 for Honeywell. Part of that's having to do with he strikes out less than half of a batter per inning, just 4.3 strikeouts per 9 while he's walking, 2.63. He's allowing 0.72 home runs per 9 innings as well, which isn't a great mark there either. So I'm not expecting Honeywell to be a guy that they trust in big leverage spots, but it is worth noting that this is a guy who has gotten the job done on the field, but some people would tell you it may not be totally sustainable.
That's fair. I recognize, so by no means do I view him as a lockdown relief pitcher, but I think for all intents and purposes, he's pitched well for the Dodgers. And sure, the expected stuff maybe eventually will creep up. At this point, the Dodgers need to win 8 games. I think the likelihood of Brent Honeywell factoring heavily into more than 3 of those is very slim. Totally. So at this point, those percentages might not bear out. Now, if he's on the opening day roster next year, and he stays up with the team for an entire season, do his stats look different than what we've seen these 20 games? Perhaps, because some of the expected stuff that the computers have spit out for everybody suggests that is the case. But again, like if he just kind of keeps doing what he's been doing, then who cares about expected stats? Because at that point, the reality was he continued to pitch well enough for the Dodgers. And like you said, he's not going to be somebody, they have Evan Phillips, they have Blake Trinan. So as much as losing Alex Vesia is significant, they have other options that they're going to go to in these big situations. And really Brent Honeywell's role at this point is going to be like, I don't want to like belittle it and say eat innings, but sort of if Walker Buehler has a short start, if they go to a bullpen game and they need 2 innings from somebody early on, like he might be somebody that they call on. And I mean, look, I know fans aren't necessarily criticizing this move, so it's a moot point, but he is somebody that a lot of people wanted up on the roster still when they were, kind of cycling through relief pitchers. And I think Joe Kelly was coming back. Like people were upset that Brent Honeywell was taken off the team. Yeah.
300 with a super chat. I picked the Dodgers in 6. That was also my prediction. And he has the real important question here to ask, Matt. Does Honeywell still have the fabulous perm? Can you report whether or not the curls are still there?
Oh man, I can't remember. I feel like maybe they were when the NLDS started, but by the time we got to San Diego, they might not have been anymore.
Okay. Okay. I mean, come on. We get what's his aunt or somebody that came and did his hair, I think was the story. So let's get the curls back and dialed in there. But I'm with you. Let's talk real quick about that Mets move. You mentioned the Mets only carrying 12 pitchers in a 7-game series with 3 consecutive games in 3, 4, and 5. I don't understand this. You have it. I mean, you have a designated hitter already, so there's not necessarily obvious platoon guys. I wouldn't think. So kind of a surprising move to me. If the Dodgers had gone to 12 pitchers, I think we'd be leading this show with what the heck are they doing? So I suppose as a Dodgers fan, without really knowing all of the details, I'm pretty excited that the Mets have made that decision themselves.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe I've just been programmed to expect if you're allowed 13 pitchers, and this hasn't been the case.
Yeah,
if you're
there's a
allowed
reason
14,
they cap you on pitchers and not hitters. Like they're like, take as many hitters as you want.
If you're allowed let's say you'd be allowed 14 pitchers, 15 pitchers. The Dodgers would just max out that number pretty much every single time. And I don't know if I've just, like I said, been sort of programmed to expect that from every team. But, yes, in the NLDS, that's obviously when you see things much different because, I mean, not necessarily for the Dodgers because of the state of their rotation. But yeah, to see any team, go into a best, where it's the NLCS or the World Series type of thing, any best of 7 to short yourself one pitcher is odd to me. Now, I could understand it if you were a team that has, 4 quality starters and like these 4 guys are absolutely starting games for us. Each one is capable of going at least, 6 innings. Yeah. And you want to and you go shorter on your bullpen because you can kind of, figure that stuff out. Like I could see it, but I don't think that characterizes the Mets team, right? Like this isn't their front line to me, and no disrespect, as Daniel would say, no disrespect to their rotation. It doesn't scream like, hey, we have 3 viable aces that are going to lead our staff, and so we don't need to lean on the bullpen as much. But we'll see. I know that they added Jeff McNeil, who's back from I think a wrist fracture that he had. He missed the first 2 rounds.
He was playing in the Arizona Fall League. It's almost on like a rehab appearance last week, I believe.
Yeah, and so I saw some comments, concerned about him being another, quote unquote left-handed hitter. I mean, it's Jeff McNeil. Like the guy sat out the final game of the regular season a couple years ago to win a batting title. Like, give me a break.
I'm with you. I see some people mentioning Grimace. By the way, are we boycotting McDonald's for the next week? Is that what do we? Have
I wondered about that. Yeah, that might be kind of. I mean, look, I've been open. Like McDonald's is a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. Like late night, if I'm hungry, they're open late. Like it works. But yeah, might have to.
I'm shopping at Wendy's this week. That's all I'm saying. We're going Wendy's biggie bags all week in honor of dethroning Grimace. Although some people have pointed out Grimace is from Los Angeles, which is where McDonald's is from. So I mean, maybe we gotta maybe there's a little bit of home cooking here that we can get with Grimace. So we got a few more minutes here, Matt. Let's talk game 1 really briefly. Senga on the mound for the Mets. We've talked about him. Flaherty for the Dodgers. What are you expecting from Jack Flaherty? If I set the over under at 4 2/3, do you think Flaherty gets through a full 5 innings or more for the Dodgers today?
I think so. I think he hits the over on that. And, he's been a little shaky, obviously, heading into ending the season. And then his start in the NLDS wasn't what I think most of us would have expected. Flaherty did, sort of admit to that he was trying to do a little bit too much type thing. And he needs to kind of avoid that mindset.
It feels like the easiest thing. If you stink, it's just like, you know what? I was just trying too hard.
Perhaps.
It's like, tell me the one thing. It's like sitting in the job interview where they're like, what's your biggest weakness? It's like, you know what? I care too much. Yeah. I just care too much. I work too hard. I try too hard.
Work long hours.
Yeah, exactly. I just need to, that's like just the go-to. Like Mookie's struggling, trying too hard. He just cares too much pressure, Anyways, it's probably true. I just laugh.
Yeah, I think in this case, it was there was some truth behind it. And, there's a different layer, like there's another element of pressure on him because he's hometown kid, grew up rooting for the Dodgers, and like all that stuff is out there. And he got asked about it again before his NLCS start, and he'd been asked about it leading into his NLDS start, and as the regular season was coming to a close. So like he's hearing all that stuff, and I think it becomes human nature to sort of add that extra pressure, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I do think I think he was being truthful to it. I don't necessarily know if that's all to blame, like in terms of his velocity and things like that. Andrew Friedman did say there were some mechanical issues that the Dodgers were ironing out to help Flaherty sort of rebound. So I think, having already made one playoff start for the Dodgers, having hopefully adjusted his mechanics, like I think we'll see a better outing from him than we did in the NLDS.
28 starts this season. He went under 5 innings just one time in 28 starts, 11 starts for the Dodgers. Just that the one was a 3-inning appearance against the Braves back on September 14th. He has gone at least 5 in every other start this season. So we know the leash is going to be shorter. The off day yesterday, the bullpen's fully rested, even with a game 2 coming the next day. But really, I'm with you. I think Flaherty 5 innings. So let me give you this. If I set the over under on runs allowed by Jack Flaherty at 2.5, and you had to take either the over or the under, all right, which one would you take?
Oh man, this is tough. That's a good
I'm
line.
taking the under. I feel good about Flaherty. I think the Mets might be a little bit sluggish, having to travel across the country, having a couple of days off to clear their heads. And I'm not saying, we just know that sometimes it takes an inning or two to get ready. So if Flaherty can get through the first inning, I'm going to go 5 innings, 2 earned. That's my prediction for Flaherty.
Yeah, I'll go under. I'll go under on that. I think he holds them to 2 and gets through maybe even 5 1/3.
Yeah. Okay. 5 1/3, 5 1/3. And you said under? You said
under. Yeah, I'll take the under.
Okay.
I'm with you.
I like it. All right. Let's get to some questions here. We got about 5 more minutes. We'd love to get to those. There, of course, will be a post-game show tonight. So make sure you're right back here on the Dodger Blue 1958 channel. We see a lot of familiar names and faces. So I'm sure you will be with us. And then every night of the week, basically, we've got live content coming at you here. So make sure you are subscribed. You ring the notification bell. Matt has referenced, we've got interviews up from prior days that you can check out on the Dodger Blue YouTube page, as well as an interview Matt and I did with David Vesia this morning, which, look, Vesia is always worth listening to. He gave me some insights on Mookie Betts and what maybe tweaked with him that I hadn't heard before, as well as some thoughts on who the Dodgers might be starting in game 2 that might be worth listening to. We'll just say that. Let's see. Jonathan wants to know, do we have to beat all the New York teams to win it all? They might.
Maybe, but I'm on the I think the Guardians might pull off a little bit of a shocker over on the AL side.
Okay. That Guardian, I mean, Clase is not a guy I want to see anywhere near the postseason. That's all I'm saying. That one individual man is going to be terrifying. Michael wants to know, is Dalton Rushing going to be the biggest what if of the postseason? No, Michael, the answer is no, because they're going to win the World Series. And so none of us are going to be asking what if Dalton Rushing. I will say this. I like Dalton Rushing. We had him on the show. I think he's going to be incredibly good. I think as fans, we are so quick to anoint the next guy and just assume that that guy's going to come up and be awesome. And he's going to be way better than the alternative. And so is Dalton Rushing going to have an incredible career? Possibly. But does that mean that, like, right now, after a month in AAA, he was ready to contribute in the postseason? Like, no. And we can always play the what if game, and we can always say, well, had they called him up, he would have done. Yeah, the reason we could say that is because we didn't see it. Or if Mookie Betts could go 0 for 22 and while almost winning the MVP, then maybe, just maybe, the guy who has a month in AAA was going to come up and struggle as well. So I like Dalton Rushing, and I don't mean to be overly negative, but I think it's always this. We do this with Kasperius too. It's like, oh my gosh, Kasperius is so much better than Joe Kelly or fill in the blank. It's like he might be, or Enriquez, who everybody loved, might come in and give up 2 home runs. Like that might also be what happens. And so I think we just need to be slow with our expectations. These guys might be good long-term. They might be good short-term, but just penciling them in for being awesome immediately, I think is something that bugs me from time to time. So off my soapbox, back to you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, there's nowhere for him to play. Like, sure, Teoscar could move to center field, but that's not something the Dodgers want to do. And you're not going to bench Teoscar. Like, it's not like he's not hitting. So I think it's fine. Like, Dalton Rushing is not going to be a what if for me, like you said. Like, he's just not enough experience yet, and it's fine. Like, it's nothing. It's not an indictment on him. It's just a little too early this year.
Noah's asking the real questions here, Matt. If your guilty pleasure is McDonald's, what's a typical order?
Oh man, I enjoy some chicken nuggets. I'll indulge on some double cheeseburgers.
Yeah. Double cheeseburger or McDouble? I realized a few years ago there's a big difference between these two things.
Yeah, you know me and cheese. So don't throw. I'll pay the extra 40 cents or whatever it is for that additional slice of cheese. If you hand me a McDouble, I'm very upset. And it has happened to me where I've gotten home and it's a McDouble and I'm very upset.
Oh, man.
I will add a little bit of a pro tip that I learned. You can ask for your chicken nuggets, I don't know, crispy or well done. I forget like how to specifically say it. and they
Okay.
come out a little bit crispier, and they're actually, but you have to wait. Sometimes they'll have you park the car, but they do taste pretty good.
Hey, if you're already indulging McDonald's, what's another 5 minutes
Yeah,
waiting in
exactly.
the parking lot? I just
Exactly.
saw today they're doing a chicken Big Mac. You can get a Big Mac.
I saw that.
I love Big Macs. I remember loving Big Macs as a kid. I don't know if quality's gone down or if my tastes have just changed, but I feel like I'm disappointed when I order Big Macs nowadays compared to as a kid. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
I have to be in the mood for one. And yeah, and so if I'm like kind of craving it, then it's fine because I wanted it and it like will
Yeah.
taste the way I sort of expected. But yeah, I mean, I didn't eat them too much as a kid, so I didn't have like I don't have that. I got turned on to as my taste kind of evolved.
Wow, this was it was an acquired taste for you. I like that.
It was.
Okay, let's end with this. Christopher says stress level on a scale of 1 to 10 for the Mets series. Would you say lower on the scale than the Padres series? I'll take first stab at this. 1,000% lower than it was in the Padres because losing to the Mets will hurt me so much less than losing to the Padres would have hurt me emotionally. And I know people think I'm crazy for that. Some people do. Some people get it. But that's where I'm at. The second thing that I think is significant, I think the Mets are not as good of a team as the Padres. So I think the Dodgers have a better chance to win this series than they did to win the NLDS. And third, a 7-game series favors the Dodgers. The more games you give us, the better team has a higher likelihood of winning. I think the Dodgers are much better than the Mets. And so for all of those reasons, it doesn't mean losing to the Mets, I'm going to be like, oh, who cares? Like, not at all. I'm just saying relative to the Padres series, which is how the question was phrased, I am way less stressed. So that said, it's playoff baseball, so I'm very stressed. Stress level on a scale of 1 to 10. Today, 0-0. Confidence at an all-time high. Just beat the Padres. I'm going to say my stress level is a 3.5, Matt.
It's higher than mine. I'm at like a 2.
Okay.
And again, like
You're picking a sweep. So, I mean, I'm surprised it's a 2. I thought this might start with the 1.
I mean, only because it still is October baseball and anything can kind of happen. Like we have seen, would I be like all this being said, would I be fully stunned if the Mets were to win this series? No, because I would chalk it up to they are the hot team that, every year there seems to be one and people, get worried about and this and that. But yeah, I mean, I just don't, I don't think the Mets have enough talent to compete with the Dodgers, even with the injuries that the Dodgers have.
Yeah. And I see Matty Man saying, "Hey, I hope the Dodgers are less than a 2, and again, or more than a 2. Excuse me." Listen to the interview with Vesia because I basically asked him that question. I'm like, "Is there any chance of a letdown series, a look ahead type thing?" And he's like, "I don't think so because of the guys that they have in this locker room, who have been there, but also the new guys, Teoscar, Ohtani, Jack Flaherty, those types of guys, and the existing." He credits Walker Buehler for being a key instigator in the turnaround because of how he handled Game 3 and everything that happened in it. And so I think when you have guys like that, you've got Kershaw, and it's sort of hey, we don't know if this is the last thing. I just think there's enough urgency and enough experience where a bunch of these guys have lost way too early the last few postseasons. And so none of them are like taking any of this for granted because they've seen it taken from them. And so I just find it impossible to believe that the Dodgers are going to come out flat, that they're not going to take this seriously. If anything, I think it's going to work to their advantage because they're like, we've been here before. We know what's at hand. We know what's at stake, and let's go ahead and take care of it. So that's that's where I'm at. Quickly, you're predicting a sweep. So you're predicting the Dodgers to win. You're predicting Flaherty to go under 2.5 earned runs. So you want to give me a score prediction for today?
Well, first, the sweep was my biased prediction. The unbiased was Dodgers in 5.
So confusing. You complain about nerd stats being confusing. We can't even get a clear sense of what Matt thinks is going to happen.
My real pick, because that's how it was asked to us on the live show. What was they specifically asked for those two.
But I thought you said your prediction was that you think they're going to sweep them because you're not worried about the Mets.
No, that was my bias. Like,
got it.
Mets have no chance. My unbiased, which is like we'll consider it my official pick, is I think Dodgers in 5.
Dodgers in 5. Okay, so I won't assume then that you have them winning today. I'm going to stick with my Game 5 prediction, 7-2 Dodgers, I think is how this one ends. That did not work out well for me in Game 5, so much like some of my other picks, just keep throwing it against the wall till it sticks. So 7-2 Dodgers, my prediction. Yours is what?
6-3.
6-3. All right. And Matt's got the Dodgers in 5. I've got the Dodgers in 6. and we'll see what happens. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you hopping on a live show in the middle of your Sunday. We'll let some of you get back to watching NFL football just in time for the Raiders to kick off at the 1 o'clock hour, I believe. And who's not fired up for Aiden O'Connell versus Justin Fields in a game that might have 32 total points in it? But we appreciate you. There will be a live show tonight. Scott will be on it. Are you with Scott tonight?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it'll be me.
Scott and Matt will be here post game. And then again, we have live shows Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. As long as this season continues, we will have live shows. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Get ready for that 5 o'clock first pitch. And of course, go Dodgers.